Hello there everyone, it's Carol from the Crafty Emporium. This is the third of the 5 things challenge, things being very vague as to what your 5 things can be, and of course it's just for fun, so it's up to you how strict you want to be with those 5 things. But the 5 things can range from the different types of papers that you use, or the different fabrics, or the different bits of embellishment in terms of buttons, lace, crochet, all those sorts of things. You can set your own criteria as to what the 5 things are. Now, before I actually start talking about what's here on my desk, I just quickly want to mention that in the first video I talked about using these embossing folders, like bookmark type embossing folders, and a lady asked me where I got them from. Well, these 3 were actually from a friend of mine who was destashing, and so I got those from her, so they came just as they are. I don't know whose they are, but just to show you, I have got a couple that I named. So this one is a Sizzix one, and I don't know whether you can see that, but this is a, like this one you could do, yeah, put that under there, is that better? There you go. So you can see that this one you could put on the edge of an envelope flap, which would be really lovely. So that's Sizzix. And then this one that's still in the package is called Autumn Morning, and it's a signature collection by Sarah, and I think her name's Davis. My eyesight's not good enough to read that little tiny writing. Let me just see. Can any of you read that? I can't. I think it's Sarah Davis anyway. So it's the signature collection. So Sizzix and Sarah. But I guess if you just type in embossing bookmarks, that might help. So that was just as a by the by. So today's project is, it's a double whammy really. When I say to you the word tag, this is what you automatically think of. It's the luggage tag style shape that we automatically think of as soon as you hear the word. And there are so many videos out there of the different types of tags that you could create. I mean, really, your imagination is what's holding you back in terms of what you want to create. So if you, not necessarily holding you back, but sometimes it prevents you from thinking beyond what you see in front of you, and can stop you from being creative. So don't let that stop you from playing. Playing is what helps you to create something unique. Unique to you, unique in your style, unique in the terms of the colours that you use, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I digress. This is essentially what we think of as a tag. Now, at Christmas time, we also get a lot of round tags. So there's no reason why we can't dispense with that shape. That's that gone. And go to circles. Now, I've used scallop circles on all my examples, mainly because I only have the scallop dies. And these are my X-cut scallop dies. I don't have any just plain circles, so they're on the wish list. To just get some plain circles, and of course there's your punches as well that you can get, but they tend not to be quite big enough sometimes for some of these projects. So these are the scallop ones that I've used for each of these. Now I'm going to go through them quickly with you, because again, it's just about you using your own imagination. So what I did here was I cut out this scallop shape, this scallop circle, to this beautiful paper, and it was from a really cheapy, from the pound shop type paper, 6x6 paper pad, and punched a hole in it, put some sari silk ribbon in for the hanger, put a ball pin on, put a charm on it, put some stickles on the edge to make it that little bit glitzy, and then on the back I cut out another circle and then cut it in half, attached it so it now forms a pocket, so that I have got in there some smaller squircles as little mini tags for writing on. Okay, so circle, pocket, sorted. Here's another one. This one was using my Pride and Prejudice book, so that was using that paper. There you go, look, Miss Darcy is mentioned on there. Cut out another circle, cut out a pocket, just by cutting it in half and attaching it to the main circle. And then if we turn it over, and I'll take these bits out, I attached the book page to a piece of music paper just to give it a little bit more body. And then with the other half of the circle that I'd cut in half, I put a pocket on the back as well. Then added the butterfly embellishment, and then added, oh, I'm dropping my bits. Oh well, that's disappeared. Got to find that later. And then cut a little rectangle out of the leftover bits of paper and attach that on the top. Punched a hole so that that will become the hanger. And then from all the leftover little bits of papers, I cut out your normal shape tag and some little rectangles and little bookmarky type shapes, and put those in there as well. So it just adds a different shape to the page. I'm missing one now because I've dropped it. You know, it just adds a different shape to your page instead of it always being rectangular or square. The circle just adds a little bit more of a shape to it. This one here was a smaller squircle, and what I did here was I attached a piece of crochet from a tablecloth that I've got, added that on the back to give the front circle that little bit of, you know, sturdiness. Cut another circle in half to add the pocket, and then added my little bits from my leftover bits of paper inside of that pocket, and then just added a button and some twine on the top. Use my stickles again for just decorating the edge up. This circle here was 2 big circles, and all I did here was I folded that top edge down of the circle so that it now forms almost like a purse pouch, that you can then add some papers inside of there. Punched my hole, and then I stuck a big doily piece on the back just as a decorative piece, and again just use my stickles and run it off the edge to add that little bit of glitz and glamour. This one was a series of leftover half circles that I'd cut, and I just layered them up. So I've got the big one, then I'd got a piece of doily, then I'd got a piece of another half circle, and then a little punched out circle that I just trimmed off to make that little bit of a decorative edge, and then I added some lace trim onto the back of that so that could sit on the edge of your page. You know how we cut doilies in half and we attach those to the edges of our pages? Well, this now looks like a doily, so I could stick that on the edge of my page, and then that would then become a tuck spot, but it just is something a little bit different. And then this one was the full circles, and I'm going to show you how to cut this out, but I made this into a little booklet, and then again with some half cut circles I added those on the inside to make little pockets. So that makes a nice little booklet. So again, what you could do is have that as your on the edge of your page, and then that could tuck underneath maybe. And then of course there's the petal envelope, which I'm going to demonstrate to you how you make one of those. Okay, so let's start off with the petal envelope. Now, from 4 sheets of 6x6 paper, I cut out all the circles that I needed. Now what I did was, if I just show you on this one first, on this piece of paper, so I used my biggest one, and I would place that down there because I want to be able to pick out that image, and then I used 2 of the smaller ones to then utilise that space and that space, and therefore then I've picked out the 3 main images that are on that page, and then these little leftover bits of paper are all the bits and pieces that I've made to tuck inside of the pockets here. All right, so from one sheet of 6x6 paper, I've got 3 different circles. All right, so what I did, put that to one side for a sec, was I cut out my 4 circles that I need for my petal envelope, and then I've got these other circles already pre-cut as well, so that I can do something with those later. So to the petal envelope, what we're going to do is I've cut these out, and then I've just inked up the edges of my paper, and I used my vintage photo distressing for doing that. And we're going to fold these in half. Now mine's scalloped, so there's a little bit more of a thought process to go in this, because I could fold this in half and have a half scallop bit there, and I don't want that. I want it to be so that the fold is here, so that I've got a full scallop edge, because having that little half one actually becomes a little bit of a pain in the butt, so we want a full one. Okay, so when I fold it in half, I can match my scallop edges up with each other, and I've now got my full scallop here and here, and it's folded in half. And I'm going to do that with all 4 pieces. Now if you have got a patterned paper where the pattern becomes important in terms of what you want to see on top of your envelope, you will need to think about the direction that you're going to fold this, whether it's that way, that way. Can you see how turning it round changes the position? In fact, you'll probably see it more on this one, won't you? So if I fold it there, or if I fold it there, or if I fold it there, you see I'm going to get more of the image here, but it's also could be directional, so just watch out for the directional part of the image on your papers. There's number 3, and there's number 4. Oh, get that one quite right. Okay. Now what you could then do is I added, if I open this up, I added an extra square in the centre to give it a little bit more stability. If I turn it over, you can see now where all these circles overlap, and if you look very closely, there's a tiny little gap in there. If I hadn't put this on the inside of it, then you would actually see that tiny little gap on the inside, but as I say, this extra square just gives it a little bit of stability. So the size that you cut that to is now the measurement of this straight edge here, and mine worked out to 4 inches. So I've cut out a 4-inch square, and if I show you, look, I'll show you a bit better than that. Come on, Carol. Can you see how that now matches up size wise? All right, the scallop edges themselves just go slightly beyond. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to sit that on top of that half. Okay, so I've just sat half of that folded scallop underneath that bit of paper, and then I'm going to sit the other one then underneath there as well, and then I'm going to sit the third one underneath there too, so that it looks like that. Now I'm just going to lay those down a minute flat, because I want to turn it over to the back. In fact, I've done that wrong, haven't I? Would you know? There's no like live TV to make things go wrong. Okay, I'm alternating my patterns and I didn't. So, half circle underneath the square. Then I want the patterned one. Yeah. Then I want the patterned one underneath. Then I want this one, the lined one, then underneath that. There we go. That's better, Carol. Okay. So then I'm going to lie those down flat on the top on the right side. Then I'm going to flip it over. Now if you have a look closely, can you see how this one is sat underneath that and this one is sat underneath that one? So we've got to have this overlapping effect going around. So the fourth one is the one that's the slightly more, you have to put a bit more thought into it. So if I just sit that on top, it doesn't look right because it's not overlapping. So following the rule of the previous one has to go underneath. So this one is underneath, but this one needs to go on top. So it's got to slot in like that. Okay, so it's now underneath that one, but on the top of that one. Okay, so can you see now how they're all, I'm trying to hold it together so it doesn't fall apart so you can see. You see now how they're all overlapping each other. Okay. Now then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it back over and I'm going to open them up because they're all correct underneath. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull it out very slightly and I'm going to put a little thin bead of glue right next to the folded edge. If I can get my teeth to work. Okay, so the fold line is here and I'm putting glue just fractionally on this side, not on that side, but on this side. So then I can just push that under and I can just push that in place, and I'm just using my PVA, my white PVA glue. So in the UK it's Hobbycraft's tacky glue. I'm just going to pull this one out a little bit. I'm only pulling it out a little bit because I don't want it to forget the way that it's going underneath. And then I'm going to push that back in place. And this little bit of glue is just to hold everything in place, because as you saw, when you're trying to hold it, it keeps moving about. And that's a bit of a pain. So I'm just placing glue on all four of the sides. Just a thin bead of glue. Okay, so now I should be able to, if I'm really careful, turn that over. And they're all still interlocking. Right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to carefully lift up that edge and I'm going to put glue around that semicircle so that that will stick on top of that circle. And then I'm going to lift that one up and place some glue around the semicircle. Oh, went a bit too far. And that will stick on top of there. Just going to turn it round for ease. And I'm just going to put some glue around that edge. Stick that one to that one. And the last one, I'm just going to stick some glue onto there. And that will now hold those four circles in position, so that when I turn it over, they're all now held correctly. Make a bit more space, move them, there we go. So now putting it together is you flip one in, two in, three in, and then the fourth one to lock it needs to flip underneath that very first one that you folded in, and that then helps to hold them all in place. And there you have your petal envelope. Okay, so that when you can then open it up, it looks like a petal's opening up, and then you can consider decorating this inside edge here, because this is plain. Obviously if you've got double-sided paper, this will already be decorated, but you might want to add some extra things to it. From your leftover bits of paper, you could see about cutting out some square journaling cards and sit those in there. You could put ribbon or seam binding and attach it to the back here, so that you've got a piece running off here and here, so that then you could do that bow up at the front to hold it all in place. So then you could have this as a free floating piece of ephemera to go into your journal, or you could actually glue the back and position that into your journal, so then just these bits open on the front. You could of course put a belly band on the back, you could put a pocket on the back. Just use your imagination. Okay, the booklet one. So the booklet one, this is a piece of Tsunami Rose kit that I've got. Rectangle, fold it in half, and then what I then did was I placed my die so that it's on the edge of the paper here, but this bit is overhanging the fold line, and that means then that the die won't cut into the fold line. Okay, so then you cut that out, and then that leaves this edge then still flat and folded, and the rest of it then will all be die cut out. Of course, if you haven't got dies, you would then just draw around. I just drew around one of my dishes on this piece of paper, and then you would just cut it out with your pair of scissors. It is a little bit more time consuming, and this is a little tip for when you're cutting freehand, is if you imagine that that's the pencil line. If I magnified it, that would be the width of the pencil line. So you can see that it has a centre. It also has a right edge and a left edge. Well, if I magnified that pencil line, that's what it would look like. Or not quite like my hand, but you know, thickness wise. So you need to decide whether you're cutting on the inside edge, on the pencil line, or on the outside edge of the line that you've drawn. Excuse me. And the other thing is, I try and use this part of my blade. I don't use this part of my blade on my scissors, because if you use this part you end up snipping, and that's when you can end up with jagged edges. So I'm going to use this part of my blade, and I'm actually going to move the paper, not the scissors. So my scissors are facing vertically. You hold them whichever way is comfortable for you, but you move. Can you see how I'm moving the paper? And I'm closing the scissors slowly, but I'm only going so far before I'm stopping and opening them back up again. But I'm moving the paper round, not the scissors. The scissors are staying static. And I'm cutting to that outside edge of the line. Can you see I'm just tilting the blade a little as well? So I'm tilting my blade, instead of it being that way, I've tilted it just slightly so that I can see the pencil line, and it's the pencil line that I'm watching and not the scissors. And this just helps you to create a slightly smoother edged hand cut circle. Now, as I say, obviously this is a little bit more time consuming to be able to do this. You get the gist, don't you? So then you end up with a slightly smoother edged circle that you've cut out. Now with these bits here, what I did with the stickles, and I'm sure you can do it with a sponge or a bit of cloth, but I just added that little bit of my stickles onto the edge of my finger. Right, so this was my gold one. I've only got two, so I've got my gold one and my crystal one, and I just, whilst I was sat watching Merlin last night, I just run my finger off the edge. And the nice thing is that if I've got some glue in the glittery bit in the wrong place, I can just push it with my fingernail to get it into the right place. And I just went round and run my finger off the edge of all of the scallopy bits so that it just picked up that little hint of glitter. So it's now over to you to go and use your imagination to go and see what you can create with some squircles and see what you come up with. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you're doing. And just on a personal note, Doe, yes you Doe Bailey, now you can see why I said that it was quite funny about what you posted yesterday. You've already done yours, haven't you? Okay, I'll see you later. Ta-ra.